We're finally home. Feels like a lifetime ago.
We must return home.
In God of War Ragnarok, there is one word that I found to be repeated over and over through my playthrough. That word was home. Whether it was Kratos talking about his cabin or if he was talking about Rock and Sindri's house, home was a place that Kratos found was his own, a place that he could come back to after decades of suffering and tragedy. What I find the most interesting about this is that despite Kratos going out adventuring with Atreus constantly, especially in God of War 2018, he would still be very insistent on coming home. This detail in his character is one that sent me down a spiral of investigation and intrigue into the different types of homes in video games. This video will be split into 5 parts for 5 different types of home and how these types of homes had an impact on the game and if the characters in these games were affected by these homes in any way, shape or form. I will also be looking at if having a home in the game makes the game any better. But first, please make sure you subscribe as this is my longest video essay today and took a lot of effort. My name is Gabe Royale and you're watching Gabe Royale. First, I'd like to talk about physical houses as homes in video games. Now, surprisingly, not many homes have houses for the main character. For example, the original God of War does not have a house for Kratos to live in. However, in 2018 in Ragnarok, we of course knows he gets his iconic cabin that he lives in with Atreus, and later Mimir. This cabin gives off such a comfortable yet also fitting medieval vibe, which works perfectly for the Norse theming of the game. My favourite bit about this house is pretty how small it is. It was only made to house 3. And with Mimir later joining Kratos and Atreus, the number of 2 living there was brought back up to 3. Of course, as we all know, when Baldur attacks Kratos at the beginning of 2018, the surroundings of the house were a brilliant choice for an arena, that fight also being one of my top 5 boss fights in games. So it is also important to have a nice surrounding for the house. In God of War 2018's case, the surrounding is open and widespread, yet detailed and kept to itself, not straying too far away from the house. The next house I would like to talk about is Café LeBlanc from Persona 5. Now, technically this isn't a house, but it is a building, and if you didn't count this as a house, you couldn't count the home from God of War as a house, as it's a cabin. Anyways, Café LeBlanc, like Kratos' cabin, fits the mood of Persona 5 to a T. Everyone always says that Persona 5 is the most stylish game ever. And to be honest, of what I've seen and played, it's totally true. It has a brilliant jazzy feeling to it that works really well alongside the music of the game. So it's no surprise that the place that you probably end up the most at in Persona 5 is going to fall under that description perfectly. It almost looks like a jazz bar, and the lighting at nighttime really just completes the cafe really well. It, again, feels like a comfortable place to stay at in real life, and it has that slight coziness that you wouldn't typically find in homes that haven't been tried within games. As for the upstairs room where the main character will stay for the length of the game, the vibe of the downstairs cafe is continued on very well. The light bulbs are just dim enough to the point where you could say it's not bright, it's glowing. The dust particles around the room show how it's been neglected for so long up until you move up there, and the fact there are so little decorations up there until you clean up a bit makes it really feel like your own. So what about the surroundings of this house? Well, there isn't much that is surrounding the cafe, as it's just in a backstreet. But that actually works really well for this game to build on the big city aesthetic. This is just one small cafe in one small alleyway and one huge city. I could also talk for hours about how brilliant and perfect those backstreets are, but that's not what this video is about. The next house I want to talk about is actually quite a few houses. 9 houses as a matter of fact. 1 house for each generation of Pokemon. Generation 1's house was just decent. It felt like any small house that you find on the street, nothing special at all. Same goes for Generation 2 and Generation 3. Generation 4 was an improvement, it felt slightly cozier. Generation 5 was super good, it feels similar enough to the last houses to be iconic, but also innovative enough with a slight change in the angle of the roof and the decorations of the bottom floor and everything. Generation 6 introduced something that will be carried through the rest of the series, that thing being gendered rooms. Depending on your gender, your room will actually change colour. This makes little to no difference to the effectiveness of the homely feel at all. Bravo, Game Freak. In all seriousness, Gen 6's house is really nice. I really like how it feels so grand, and it's definitely an improvement from Gen 5. Generation 7 is another improvement from Gen 6, and this one feels not too spacey, but spacey enough. It also matched the Hawaiian theme of the game very nicely. And now for my favourite, Gen 8's house. This house just feels homely. It's strange how accurate this house is to British houses. It gives a really cozy vibe that I really love and just screams, this house is the start of your adventure, like all Pokemon houses should. Then Gen 9 is just it. It was the first to let you move the right joystick in the house, but there's not much point when you can only move it so far. Also, as a house, it's just okay. It doesn't seem like a super comfortable place to live. It's good, but it's very disappointing that this house wasn't another improvement like all the previous ones were. When you finish most Pokemon games, it takes you right back to the start of the game at your house, so in conclusion, when done right, houses can be one of the most effective ways to portray a home in the game, as a place you can always come back to. Google definition of a hub is the effective center of an activity, region, or network. This is essentially the same for hubs in video games, where the user or user base gathers to take part in all the other activities that are a part of the game. Hubs are extremely common in video games, but it's rare for them to fit under the definition of a home at the same time. But the ones that do it brilliantly. For example, the Comet Observatory in Super Mario Galaxy is just full of a grandiose atmosphere that ties in so well with the general theme of the game, but with it simply floating through space rather than being something like just a planet. With it actively moving through space, the Comet Observatory can fill out its role of being a vehicle that navigates the ends of the universe more effectively than something like a planet would. Some of the methods of moving around this hub are really nice too, with all the things that send you flying off into the sky to get into the upper areas of the observatory. Okay, so I'm hyping up this place so much for fitting the game, but how does it hold up as a home then? I think the homely vibe has got to come from the sense of community in all of the Toads, Luma, and everyone else who lives there. We know Rosalina is very close to all the Luma through dialogue, and the Toads help Mario out in his quest to explore the galaxies. There isn't a corner of the hub that doesn't contain an entity of some form to greet with a friendly message that pops up above their head. Another reason why I think this observatory works so well as a home is this room right here, where Rosalina tells you her story. Now, I'm not going to spoil her story to you in case you haven't played Mario Galaxy yet. Like, I hadn't played it for a long time, and I actually have a video coming out at some point about my experience with the game. But let me tell you, it really resonated with me. Not in a relatable way, but just in a way that made the bond between you and Rosalina grow stronger as she trusts you with this kind of story. Not to mention how generally nice and cozy this place looks. Like, you got this whole campfire vibe going on here and everything. It's cool. Sticking with the intergalactic stuff, the next hub I want to talk about comes from Outer Wilds, the Timber Hearth. Okay, technically this one isn't a hub, but it is where the player will begin at the start of each of their loops, which is exactly why I've included it here. Just the fact that you return here each time you die is enough to make this place feel like home, as you will come back to it again over and over again through your playthrough of the game. Not to mention the returning theme of community, what with all the NPCs being aware of each other's existence and conversing with you kindly and respectfully when you interact with them. Let's not forget that the Timber Hearth is a generally pleasing place to look at. You look at the Timber Hearth and you just think, that looks like a tight-knit community that would be nice to live at. There's also Hollow Knight's Dirtmouth, which increases in community as you progress through the game, which truly makes the place feel like your own. And Deltrude's Castle Town, which only ever even becomes a town because you've befriended all the residents of the Dark World, strengthening the sense of community again. Now, the last hub I want to talk about comes from my favourite game of all time, Bloodborne. The Hunter's Dream in Bloodborne is an exceptional location for all the general activities you'd need to do in this game. It has the fast travel, the dungeons, the shop, the skill increase, the sort of thing, the option to better your weapons, etc, etc. Now, it's a bit hard to find any sense of community in this hub at all, as there's only 2 NPCs and a shop. But that's not all you need to create a homely environment in a game. We can also go off of how often you go back to this place in the game, as we did with Outer Wilds. Now, if you're anywhere near as bad as I am in this game, you will sure as hell be going back there a lot to repair your weapons. To first visit this location at the beginning of the game, you have to die, which is actually very helpful in creating a homely atmosphere, as it solidifies itself as a location you can always fall back on when you fail, or in this case, die. Another way you can find a sense of homeliness through the Hunter's Dream is through the communication with the NPCs. When you first arrive at the Hunter's Dream, it doesn't take long for these 2 characters to warm up to you and help you out as a hunter. While it might not necessarily grant you a sense of community, as it's just you talking with these 2 NPCs who don't even interact with each other, it makes you feel like there are people waiting for you there at the Hunter's Dream. This topic is going to be really difficult to discuss because with player-made homes, you can just do whatever you want, mostly. In games that you can make your own home, it will only give you certain tools to create your home with. For example, Minecraft. You can only build with the available blocks provided for you. While I personally love the currently available selection of resources, a lot more people think that there could be more, and clearly Mojang agree, but with the constant updates to the game that just keep on giving new things. With all these blocks added to the game, I think the concept of a home, or whatever you perceive it as, can be applied in this game as perfectly as you want it to be, whether that's not at all or completely. The same can go for Terraria, which some people seem to think have a better arrangement of blocks to choose from. As long as you can think it, you can build it in these games. But the same cannot be said for the Sims series. In these games, all furniture and walls and roofs are pre-made for you to use as you wish. While this does subtract from the appeal of complete freedom in building, it introduces the benefit of making it harder for what you build to look bad, as all the decoration and design have been created to look good. But, as I said before, this can be a problem if you would like your home to not be very homely at all. I do realise that the idea of Sims is to build homely houses, but for me, that tarnishes the fun of a sandbox game. Terraria and Minecraft both have their distinctive qualities and charm to their resources, just as The Sims does. But the former gives you so much more freedom, which makes it feel much more homely as it is your own. I've spent all this time hyping up homes in video games and how well they can be done. But what about the lack thereof? Well, the truth is, games absolutely do not need any form of home for them to be good games. In fact, some of the best games I've ever played, like Resident Evil 4, Devil May Cry, or The Stanley Parable, don't even need to touch the concept of home at all. For that reason exactly, they don't need to. But games that do have homes should do it right. Yet somehow, in some way, even games that don't have any houses, hubs, or sandbox elements can still pull off home perfectly, which leads me to my next point. What did I say Kratos found home to be at the beginning of this video? I said it was a place that was his own, that he found he could always come back to. With that definition in mind, so many of our favourite games can be a home to us. Do you have any fond memories of playing maybe PlayStation 3? Was Little Big Planet one of those games that you came home to play straight after school? Something you could come back to after pulling yourself through hours and hours of boredom? What about Nintendo Wii? Do any games like New Super Mario Bros. Wii, maybe even Wii Sports come to mind? How about the Xbox 360? The GameCube? Or what about a bit more recent? Do you come back to your PS5 to play maybe some Elden Ring? Or on your Xbox Series X to play Gears of War? All these consoles I've just mentioned, and all those games that can be considered as homes to you, have to be played at home. What about handheld consoles then? The DS, the PS Vita, maybe even as far back as the Game & Watch? My point is, games are such a broad and complex medium, and home is a complex and abstract concept. In games, you can find simple pleasure in them, or experience pure rage. Home is a place where you should feel comfortable doing all of the above. So any game that you enjoy or even hate can be your home. Maybe that's my point with this whole video to begin with. We're all looking for comfort in something, and yet, games fulfill that need perfectly. Thank you for watching all the way through to this point. Not many people can sit through a full video, even ones that are just this length. Speaking of length, this video definitely took quite a lot of work to make, and it's my longest video essay to date, so I seriously appreciate you sticking around this long. And hey, since you're still here, why not try clicking that subscribe button? It doesn't take much of your time and effort, but it shows that my time and effort has paid off. And if you enjoyed, another sign that my work has paid off is giving the video a like. It helps more people see this video and therefore helps me out a ton. That's all from me for today. I'll see you in a bit.